Alright, maybe not that one. Every day when I log into YouTube, I see loads of videos where game devs try to create a game in just one day. My only issue with creating these kind of videos myself is that I'm a student, and most of my days consist of work, lectures, more work, another lecture, a tiny bit more work, and then, well, the rest of the student stuff. My solution for this? A bit of clever wordplay. If I break my quote-unquote one day into 24 hours and split that over a week, I have a much better chance of making an actual game. Obviously this kind of defeats the point of the challenge though, so for the sake of entertainment, I'm going to cut my time down to just 8 hours. I already have a nice idea for the game I'm going to go with, and while a lot of the YouTubers I've seen actually go for a sort of horror game, as I think that's probably the most popular genre for a game, I'm going to be going with what I know, and that is sheep. All the time during my animal AI videos, I got tons of comments about how cute the sheep were, and so I'm going to be creating a sheep wrangling game in which you need to guide your sheep towards a barn while trying to avoid obstacles such as wolves, rivers, falling trees, and other things like that. I don't know how the game's going to end up looking, although I do have an idea in my head of how I want it to look, and I'm excited to get started. To get started, I've created a quick block out for the scene. I edited terrain with a grass texture, added a small border for where the sheep will be able to move, and this barn area which is going to be where you're trying to wrangle your sheep towards during the game. The idea of the project will be that you try and wrangle as many sheep as you can towards the barn without losing any of them. So for example, I might add a river going through the middle and a small bridge, and that will mean that you have to individually wrangle your sheep over this bridge and into the barn. For the borders of the level, I want to add a sort of forestry scene just to make it a bit more interesting, and of course I'm going to be updating these models as I go. And I think that's what I'm going to be working on next, so I'm going to jump to that now. The barn and the fences look a bit simple for now, but I think after I decorate the scene a bit more, it'll really come to life. I actually deleted the barn doors despite being quite proud of how they looked, and replaced it with this sort of suction pipe. The reason for this is I think it'll be more entertaining to see your sheep get picked up as they get towards this area and sucked into the back of the barn. I also have a really cool idea for a nice particle effect, and I'm going to work on that now just for a proof of concept to see how that looks. So after fiddling with the particle system for quite some time, this is what I finally ended up with. As you can see, I had these particles getting pulled into the back of the pipe. I think this has a really nice cartoonish and simple effect, and I think it fits what I was going for when I started with this idea. It can definitely be improved later down the line, but for now I think I'm going to get started on the actual coding and also working on the scene a tiny bit more for these borders here. So after a little bit of code, I've ended up with this system. As you can see, I've created a pointer that follows my mouse around. I also imported the sheep model from a previous project I've been working on for the animal AI videos, and I've also imported the animations for that as well, which has allowed me to save a bit of time. As you can see, my sheep runs from the pointer's position. The next thing I want to work on is actually pulling the sheep into the barn when they get too close and into the wind particles. So after a bit more work, this is what I've ended up with. Using your pointer, you can guide the sheep to wherever you want. If you manage to guide your sheep towards the entrance of the barn, it gets sucked in and thrown to the back. I quite like the effect of it getting pulled up and rotated slowly before it gets quickly sucked to the back. I think it gives it a nice cartoony feel, and I think it's just a very satisfying thing to do. I'm quite proud of the final result here, and there's definitely some more work to be done, but for this simple game that we're trying to make quite quickly, I think this is a good starting point to actually start working on some levels, as well as just improving the overall assets around the scene here. So I've gone ahead and imported some really nice poly art assets. As you can see, I've got trees around my scene. I've added some rocks just to fill in the gaps, as well as some flowers that actually sway in the wind if you look in the scene view here. I think the ambient occlusion really helps build up the scene as well, and it really helps bring everything together for this final look. So now that I've finished with the actual environment, one thing I definitely need to get finished is the round manager. This will allow me to count how many sheep the players managed to save, as well as how many that they've lost, and award a score to them at the end of each level. So what you just saw was me setting up the round manager. As you can see, I've added UI to the top left hand. I have a timer here, as well as a sheep counter for how many sheep the players managed to collect. The timer starts at 15 seconds and the sheep counter should update as soon as the game starts. So as you can see, I have 15 seconds for each level, and the player needs to collect 3 sheep in this time frame. So if I go ahead and collect my sheep, you should see the counter in the top left corner goes up, and if I collect all 3 before the timer runs out, that will count as a round win. And if the timer runs out before you've collected all the sheep, or you've lost a sheep in the process, you'll be awarded less points for this level. So now that the system's done, I can work on some win-lose UI, and then start working on some different levels. So as you just saw, I just started working on the win-lose UI screen, and as you can see, if I collect all of the sheep here, I'll be given a 3-star score. The scores are generated based on how many sheep you managed to collect in your time frame. If I'm entirely honest, I'm not too proud of how this ended up looking, but I do think for a simple game like this, it's not going to hurt just to leave it like so. As you can see, the text just reads how many sheep that you managed to save, as well as a little message based on your performance and how many stars you got. We also have these 2 buttons, retry and next level, and you'll only be able to move on to the next level if you got 2 stars or more. So with this out of the way and about 3 hours left in the challenge, I'm finally going to start working on the second level. I'm hoping with the time left I'll be able to create at least 3 levels, as well as add some sound design and a main menu screen. Can't guarantee I'll get any of those things done, but let's get to it. So I just finished working on the first level, and as you can see, it's kind of working. If I go ahead and click play and actually guide one of my sheep towards the river, if they collide with these box colliders that I've set up, they actually sort of jump into the water. It's a bit of a silly cartoonish effect, but I do think it works quite well, and it's pretty simple how it works. There are definitely some improvements to be made with this scene. For instance, the water is a bit flat and the bridge doesn't look like a bridge, but this has taken me already about 25 minutes, and I want to move on to starting with another level. So after about half an hour, I finally finished level 2. This took me a stupid amount of time, and I spent a lot of time at one point actually adding a collider to the car spawner instead of the actual car like I thought I was doing, which is a really stupid mistake for me to have made, but I did it, so there you go. As you can see, if I go ahead and click play here, the cars will spawn every X number of seconds, and they drive past quite quickly, making it quite a challenge to actually win this level. I think this level's quite fun, but also really difficult at the same time, making it a good challenge for a level 2. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time for a second level, so I'm going to check how much time I actually have left here. If I do have time left, I'm going to try and get one more level complete, and then I'm going to try and move on to sound design, although I've never really touched sound design, so I'm not sure how well that's going to go. So for the third and final level, I decided to go with a desert theme with cactuses filling the area between the sheep and the barn. But now when a sheep comes into contact with a cactus, it sort of just pops out of existence. I really want to change that, and this level only really took me about 15 minutes or so I should theoretically have the time to add a bit of polish here. Before I start polishing, however, I really want to work on a main menu screen and level selector for the final game loop. Depending on how long that takes, I'm going to try and come back, add some particle effects, music, and some sound effects to really pull everything together. It was taking me just over 20 minutes to get something I kind of like the look of here. As you can see, if I go ahead and click play, all my buttons are now functioning. The quick game button won't actually do anything at the moment because we're in the editor, but if I click select level, you can see we have these level selectors. Click back, I go back to the main menu. Start game lets you straight into level 1, and select level lets you choose between level 1, 2 and 3. If I go ahead and maybe click level 2 here, you can see level 2 just loads like so. This main menu system took me about 25 minutes to finish, which means I have about an hour and a half to start working on the final polish, adding some sound design and maybe some particle effects. So let's get to that straight away. So I've been working on polishing this for just under an hour now, which means I have about half an hour to finalise any details. So far I've managed to add background music, sound effects, some small transitions between scenes and levels, set up all the buttons and added a few particle effects. There are still tons of things I'd like to get done, for instance saving scores and the best times that the players manage to get, introducing some different mechanics with the levels and the way you actually interact with your sheep. However, with only half an hour left on the board, I think I'm going to have to scrap those ideas just to stay true to the challenge, and I think I'll spend my last half an hour making a title graphic for the main menu screen here. So I've got my iPad here, I'll throw together a nice graphic, and then we can go for a final playthrough of the project. And with that now out of the way, the game is complete. There are so many things I would have loved to have added, but a challenge is a challenge. I think I actually went just over the 8 hours by about 10 minutes, so I guess technically I did fail the challenge, but we're going to ignore that, and let's get into a playthrough. If you made it all the way here, I just want to say a huge thanks for the support on the channel recently. Hitting 1,000 subscribers so quickly has been such an amazing experience, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. On that note, how do you guys think I did with the challenge? Be sure to drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Keep in mind I've never made a game on a time limit before, but I found it to be a fun and enjoyable experience overall. The time pressure pushes you to think of solutions to a problem quickly, which can be quite rewarding when you get it right. Although I will say that it definitely decreased my ability to write clean code, as I often jumped into a script without any plans. Besides that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.